grandfather, right, that started the irrigation here. In 1903, he got the license to get the irrigation here. So that's when Mr. McKinnon applied for the license to take water out of Battle Creek for irrigation. And then he built a dam up where the weir is now.
Yeah.
And they started irrigating. Well, 1912, it was wrecked with the spring flood, and they had to rebuild it again. And then by that time there were other people involved. There was a Mr. Pete Reeser, David Wood, and they were getting easements from Sophie Richardson to go across her land with irrigation ditches. And sometime in the 40s, Mrs. McKinnon found that she couldn't keep on operating the place on her own, and so then PFRA was purchasing other people's property on the irrigation system, the lands. There was Wiley's and Gilchrist that had land also. They were selling to the PFRA, so Mrs. McKinnon sold them. When the Second World War was over, well, my husband came back from overseas, and he applied to, well, first of all, Mrs. McKinnon had reserved the rights to the building site and buildings when she sold. She wanted the buildings because of this big old house, you see. And so when her grandson came back from overseas, he applied for this particular quarter, and he got it through the PFRA.
So your husband was is a veteran?
He was. He's passed away 8 years ago. I guess it's 8 years, soon be 9. But when he came back from overseas, then he came here. His parents lived with him for a while, from about 1946 to 1950. We were married in July of 50, and then we took up residence here. And I've been here ever since.
I noticed there's a lot of unique buildings out here on the property. What are some of those?
The big one with the front face, or a big front on it, was a dance hall.
Oh my God!
In Coltsall.
In Coltsall. It was built in 1915 and brought out here, then to this place in the fall of 1949. Well, they used it for a dance hall. There was stores in the first floor, on the first floor, but the dance hall was always up on the second floor. The family was from Vidora, actually, east of it. I was born on a farm straight east of Vidora, probably about 3 miles or something.
So when you were growing up there, what was it like?
Well, when I was 3 years old, my parents moved from there to 6 miles straight north of here?
I guess.
6 or 8 anyhow, to a district that was called Oxerat. Have you heard of that? Okay. And so we lived in the Oxerat district. And I went to school there until I was in grade 11. Then I took my grade 11 in Coltsall. After that, I supervised at Oxerat for 1 year. Then after that I got married. I mean, the irrigation has been tremendous. I mean, when I first came here, they were using ditches and canvases. I don't know if you understand irrigation at all, but in order to block the water off, to make it go out on the fields, they would block it off in these irrigation ditches with canvases. Well, that worked for a while, and the land wasn't very well leveled and so on. So then after that, well, we got heavy leveling equipment in and leveled the land, and all our neighbors pretty well did also. Built better ditches, the PFRA did, and they put in proper turnouts, and anymore we use tiles to run the water out on the fields and so on, with little dikes and so on. So for years we were farming because we owned land south of, and in 67, 69, my husband put all the farmland into grass, you know, Preston wheat, alfalfa, Russian wild ryegrass, and so on. And from then on, we weren't farming. We were running cattle. And we have sheep, few sheep. Did spend a year about milking cows and delivering milk in Console, but that was too much work. Couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the history of ranching or farming in your family, you and your husband? What sort of work have you done over the years?
Well, it's been primarily, since he quit grain farming,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been raising cattle and so on, and we calve the cows out here, move them to our south place early in the spring, and when the PFRA leases open up, well, we put a good share of them in the PFRA lease till fall. Bring them back out, bring them home, and feed the calves out, or feed the calves some anyhow, and then sell them in the spring.
Your kids are all involved in the farm?
No, just my son. I have a daughter.
No.
She has 4 daughters,
Wow.
and they have given me 8 great-grandchildren now. There's 1 son. And he has never married.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the community?
Big difference in the size of the equipment they use, that the farmers use.
Mm-hmm.
Difference in our haying equipment. I mean, gosh, when I first came here, we were using a mower, behind a tractor, and what they called a dump rig. From there, I mean, we got rid of that, and we started using a swather, and I don't know what year we started using a big round baler. We had a square baler before that, but we're to a big round balers now. And self-propelled swathers for doing the haying and so on. So quite a change. And you see all these farmers with their big 4-wheel drive tractors too, I mean, we don't have that because it isn't required in what we're doing. So.
The equipment's a big one.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the impact of having that bigger equipment? Is it hard for a small...
People selling and moving out, and other guys gobbling up the land. Yeah, that's the way it is. We're getting fewer and fewer residents all the time. Like between Console and where our land is to the south of Console, there used to be 1, 2, 3, probably about four families living at least.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's only 1.
Oh my gosh.
And then where my husband's people had a farm, I mean, that's vacant, and there's just so many vacant farms.
What are some of the ways that people survived the hard times in the 30s?
Well, of course, things were so different then. I mean, my dad, him and a neighbor worked together a lot. And I mean, they went to what they called the bush, up in the hills, and brought home timbers and so on to use for corrals, and they sawed it up and had firewood, and so on. And I mean, my dad was a real horseman. He always used horses. We hardly had a tractor. I guess he had a tractor before we were married, but it wasn't much of a tractor. He preferred to use horses, Mm-hmm. But they would fatten their own animals and butcher and so on, milk cows, feed pigs. My parents had sheep a good share of the time too. So raised chickens, used them for food. And things were different. When you butchered a pig, you cured the meat and rendered the lard and all those type of things. You canned the meat because you didn't have freezers back then, and so you would can it.
Yeah.
We went always to the Cypress Hills if there was any possible chance that we could pick berries, Saskatoons and gooseberries. Oh yeah, they're kind of sour, but they used to make a pretty good jam. Is the fact that in 1937, the Cypress Lake went dry, or practically dry. Walked across that lake bottom over to the other side of the lake to help my parents pick berries. I was only, 7 or something, but I can remember jumping across these big cracks in ground where the lake bottom, actually. Daddy couldn't take the team of horses across, you know, because it was kind of soft, I suppose. And so he tied them to some bush on the trees on the south side of the lake, and we walked across the lake bottom over to the other side and picked berries. And it's something that's really stuck in my head. My sister was just a baby, and Mother carried her. Like I say, there won't be too many people remember that. My mom, of course, is still alive. I mean, she would remember. My sister was too young. My dad's gone, so...
Your mom is Mary.
Sigrid?
Yeah. She's heard about her. And your dad's name?
Danny.
Danny. Yeah, people were mentioning to speak to your mom as well.
Oh, yes.
Just really
Well, she came through the hard times. She can tell you what the hard times were. She was a young married woman,
yeah.
you know, and they didn't have much.
Where did they immigrate from? Were they
Well, she
States or?
Well, she lived actually in the Vidora district here, but she originally came from England when she was 18 months old.
Oh, wow.
And my dad came from North Dakota when he was about 10 years old.
Wow. Where in England was she from, do you know?
I can't, I've got it in my family information, but I can't just tell you.
My family's lived in England.
Yeah, I think my grandmother actually was a stenographer in London, but I can't tell you where my grandfather and grandmother lived after they were married. Mother has a picture on her wall in her living room that says, she says that's because she was born, you know, the house she was born in. I don't remember.
And what's your date of birth?
February the 28th, 1931. I belong to the Oxford 4-H. I was the first secretary for their, when they organized in the late 40s. And I belong to the Homecraft Club. That's were the things that I was mostly involved in during it while I was a teenage girl. Like, you know. Afterwards, I got to be a married woman. I come down here, and well, of course, then my husband was a Legion member. I joined the Ladies Auxiliary with the Legion, our Reno Legion. I went to a course, or a summer camp, I guess you'd call it, in Swift Current that the cooperative put on, trying to encourage us all to be co-op members, sort of thing. Took in a church group at Arrowwood, Alberta. The Brethren Church in Vidora had some of the young people go to Arrowwood to church camp. With the, what did you call it, the Home and School. I was president of that for a while. And mostly my main interest after I got married was this place. I mean, I was out helping my husband with the calving, the seeding, I was out doing most everything. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of unique, isn't it, to be raising your babies and helping so much?
My mother-in-law was a great help. She would come and kind of take care of the kids, and I worked out pretty much almost like a hired man a good share of the time. I run the tractors, haying and summer fallowing and all those kinds of things.
Rode your horse?
Yeah, I rode my horse.
Wow, so who taught you all that? You learned from experience?
Well, I learned to ride my horse and chase cattle and calve out cows and so on, I guess probably at home with my parents, you know. And then when I came down here, I hadn't ever run a tractor very much. But after we got married, well, I started running tractor and so on. I'm still go out and feed cows on it with the tractor now and again and so on. So. But I spent many hours on haying equipment, baling. Lawrence went to school in Calgary for 4 years?
3 years.
3 years, okay. And when he was gone, well, I pretty well did all the baling. Alfred did the swathing and so on, and I did the baling. So I've been an outside girl, shall I say. I see, when I was at home, I was my dad's hired man because my sister was 6 years or 5.5 years younger. And so who helps Dad? And so I did. And then when I got married, well, I just kept on going outside and helping, you know. And
Wow.
my mother-in-law, like I say, she spent quite a bit of time here taking care of the kids, and then they would drive up here in the morning, and then when the work's all done, they'd go down to their place for the night and so on. And we'd have our kids, and I'd be in the house and so on. But that was through the summertime when the workload was heavy. And then my in-laws moved to Console, built a house in '64. Well, by that time the kids were getting big, but she'd still help by making a few meals and so on. So. And then, of course, this had originally been her home, you see, my mother-in-law's home. So it was...
What was her name?
Lena McKinnon. I mean, when she was married, of course, it was Smith. But she was Jim McKinnon's daughter, and I was telling you that Jim McKinnon started this irrigation. Lena McKinnon, and then she married Smith, you see. So it was their one and only son that I married, so they didn't have any other children.